The diplomatic summit collapses in exactly 7 minutes if the human doesn't wake up. And her alarm clock stopped working 3 hours ago. Kael'thas watched the security feed with the cold precision of someone who'd managed impossible situations across 17 star systems. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with barely contained panic around him. Below, on Earth, in a small residential unit adjacent to the genetic resurrection facility, according to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Olivia Smith was still asleep. Her presentation on the Resurrection Project, the one that was supposed to prove humanity's worthiness for continued membership in galactic civilization, was scheduled to begin in minutes. And the human was unconscious. Backup wake protocols? Kael'thas didn't look away from the screen showing her perfectly still form, tangled in bedding that looked absurdly soft for someone whose entire species membership status hung in the balance. All failed, sir, Arhill reported, his exoskeleton clicking with agitation. The alarm malfunctioned at 0447 hours. We attempted 3 remote override sequences. Her communication device is inactive. Standard emergency wake call generated no response. The 3 visiting dignitaries, representatives from the Vegan Empire, the Andromedan Coalition, and the Keltheran Dominion, exchanged looks that Kael'thas recognized immediately. Skepticism, barely concealed satisfaction. It appears humans are as unreliable as historical records suggest, the Vegan representative said smoothly. Unable to maintain basic temporal discipline. I propose we table this membership review until a more capable species. The summit is not tabled. Kael'thas cut in, though his voice was steady only through considerable effort. 40 years of diplomatic experience kept the desperation out of his tone. Ms. Smith will arrive. But she wouldn't. He could already taste the political catastrophe. 3 major species here specifically to assess whether humanity could manage such responsibility as species restoration. 3 species looking for reasons to vote no. And humanity's representative was sleeping through her own trial. Vexia's voice crackled across the secure channel. Kael'thas, we have another problem. The cubs are moving. The observation chamber fell silent. Kael'thas's attention snapped to the secondary feed showing the genetic resurrection wing. The 2 saber-toothed tiger cubs, magnificent creatures, resurrected from extinct DNA, barely 6 months old, were padding purposefully through the corridor that connected the care facility to the residential quarters. They're not supposed to leave the containment wing, someone murmured. But they did. The feed showed them moving through Olivia's door, which was sealed, but apparently, cubs with enough mass and evolutionary predatory instinct could overcome locks designed by species who domesticated nothing. The animals padded into the human sleeping quarters with the deliberation of creatures who knew exactly where they were going. Evacuate, the Keltheran said flatly. If those predators turn hostile, the human will be undefended. We can't allow— Wait, Vexia interrupted. She's not waking up at all. On the feed, the cubs approached the sleeping human with what could only be described as gentleness. The larger one, designated Nova in Olivia's care notes, lowered her massive head and pressed her paw against Olivia's shoulder. Not slashing, not testing, pressing, almost like a question. This violates every documented interaction protocol between apex predators and vulnerable prey, Kael'thas whispered. He wasn't aware he'd spoken aloud until Arhill turned to stare at him. Those animals should have attacked. The human is immobilized, undefended. This is the evolutionary moment predators exist for. According to our behavioral models, Vexia said slowly, her voice carrying the tone of someone reading information that couldn't possibly be accurate. Extinct predators cannot exhibit bonding behaviors with humans they've only known for 6 months. The neurological pathways required for that kind of social attachment don't exist in creatures without domestication ancestry. We've verified this 17 times. The feed showed Olivia's eyes flutter. She was waking. The cubs pressed closer, their massive heads framing her small form. "Status?" Kael'thas demanded. "She's opening her eyes." The supervisor's voice came through, slightly panicked. The cubs are grooming her hair. They're not attacking. It looks like they're trying to help her wake up." Olivia's form stirred. Her hand came up, and instead of defensiveness, instead of fear, instead of any of the responses species-wide data on predator-prey interactions should have predicted, her fingers found the nearest cub's head and scratched behind its ear. "Good morning, you fuzzy disasters," she mumbled, her voice rough with sleep. "You couldn't let me sleep in just one day, could you?" The cubs made sounds that shouldn't have been possible from animals with saber-toothed tiger anatomy. Purring. Genuine, sustained purring. Like domesticated cats from Earth's pre-extinction era. "That's not," the Keltharan started. "Physiologically impossible," Vexia finished. "Saber-toothed tigers have vocal structures that don't support that frequency range." But the evidence was undeniable on the feed. Olivia was sitting up now, tangled in her bedding, scratching both cubs behind the ears while they leaned against her like she was the most important thing in their resurrected universe. She was laughing, actually laughing, making jokes about their interrupted sleep schedule. She had no idea. No idea that the Galactic Diplomatic Summit was collapsing in real time. No idea that 3 species were revising their assessments of human capability downward based on a late arrival. No idea that the creatures she was casually petting should, by every law of predator-prey, biology, have torn her apart in her most vulnerable moment. She simply treated the extinct killers like they were part of her family. Kael'thas found himself staring at the screen, watching a human woman and her impossible cubs, and realizing that the summit wasn't about to collapse. It was about to explode into something the Council had never imagined. Olivia padded out of her bedroom, humming something unidentifiable, and the cubs followed like they'd been doing it for years instead of experiencing their first conscious interaction with her. 6 months old. Genetically perfect. Behaviorally impossible. She walked directly past the tranquilizer distribution system that the Council had quietly installed 3 days ago, just in case. The system didn't activate. No threat detected. The cubs weren't attacking. They were just following her. "Come on, you furry disasters," Olivia called, heading toward the kitchen. "Breakfast is late and your aunt is grumpy." In the observation chamber, Kael'dra's exoskeleton went completely rigid. "She just called a predator that could disembowel her furry," Kaeldra said to no one in particular. "She made a joke about an apex predator." "That's not a threat assessment," Vexia pointed out, her voice tight. "That's affection." Arhil's data stream scrolled across his visual interface, his clicks becoming frantic. Her biometrics are stable. No elevated stress response. No adrenaline spike. No cortisol elevation. Her body doesn't even recognize the cubs as a threat. She's more stressed by the fact that breakfast is late than by having predators the size of large dogs following her through her living space. The feed showed Olivia moving through her small kitchen with routine ease. She pulled out food containers, prepared meals the facility sent for the cubs' specialized diet. But before she could open the first one, the larger cub nudged against her leg. Olivia looked down, assessed the situation with the ease of someone who'd clearly done this before, and reached toward the cub's mouth. "Don't," someone whispered in the observation chamber. She did anyway. Her bare fingers went into the cub's mouth, fishing around between massive fangs that could have severed her hand at the wrist. The cub held perfectly still, jaw open, completely trusting that the small human wouldn't hurt it. Olivia withdrew her hand with a piece of fruit, something that had gotten lodged between the cub's back teeth. She held it up, made a small disgusted noise, and tossed it into the recycler. "There. That was bothering you, wasn't it?" She scratched behind the cub's ear like it was the most natural thing in the universe to have your fingers in an extinct predator's mouth. The silence in the observation chamber was absolute. "That," Kael'thas said slowly, "should not have been possible." Vexia was already running diagnostics. The cub's jaw pressure capability is approximately 8,000 pounds per square inch. It could have closed its mouth and severed her hand with less effort than chewing. But it didn't. It actively prevented jaw closure to protect the human's fingers. That requires cognitive choice. That requires understanding human fragility and deciding to accommodate it. "She's doing it again," Rahil announced. Olivia had moved to a different food preparation surface and was pulling out handfuls of prepared protein. But instead of placing it in the cub's bowls, she was placing portions directly into her palm. The cubs approached, massive heads dwarfing her small hand, and ate with deliberate gentleness. Their enormous jaws closed around food and air, never touching skin, never breaching the trust implicit in feeding predators from your bare hand. "This is the first time she's fed them directly," Vexia reported. "I'm checking the historical records. The cubs have never done this before. This is initiating behavior." She initiated physical contact feeding. "Alert the council," Kael'thas commanded. "This needs senior consultation." But Olivia was already moving to the next impossibility. She sat down on her floor, voluntarily placing herself in a prone position, and let both cubs settle against her. One on each side, their massive heads resting on her legs, their massive bodies surrounding her completely. "Yeah, I overslept," she said conversationally to the cubs, running her fingers through thick fur. "The alarm died. You two could have just pawed me like normal. You didn't have to be so gentle about it, you know?" Kael'thas heard himself whisper, "She's thanking them for waking her gently." "She's treating this as normal," Vexia added, her voice barely audible. "She thinks this is routine behavior for resurrected apex predators." "She doesn't understand," Arhil said, and there was something like awe in his clicks. "She has no idea what we're watching. This isn't performance. This isn't her trying to prove something to us. This is just how she is." The observation chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of monitoring equipment. On the feed, a small human woman sat on her kitchen floor, surrounded by predators that had been extinct for 10,000 years, scratching behind their ears and talking about breakfast like it was the most ordinary thing in the universe. The council watched and slowly began to understand that they were witnessing something no contingency protocol had prepared them for. This was just baseline human behavior, and it was going to change everything. Dr. Genix had spent 437 years studying behavioral genetics across 42 different species. His theories had predicted socialization patterns for 7 major civilizations. His models had been peer-reviewed by the greatest minds in the galactic scientific community and found flawless. He watched the footage in stunned silence, and every certainty he'd built his career on began to crumble. The cub's neurochemistry shows elevated bonding markers, he said. Finally, his voice coming through the secure channel with the careful precision of someone speaking around profound disbelief. Their neural pathways are lighting up like they're genetically bonded to her. They're treating her as kin. Familial hierarchy recognitions everything we see in blood-related predators. How is that possible? We uploaded 0 social imprinting data. The genetic template doesn't contain environmental bonding protocols. Kaolthas leaned forward. Could they be malfunctioning? No, Ginnick said flatly. They're functioning better than expected. That's what frightens me. One by one, the Council's safeguards proved unnecessary. The proximity alarms didn't activate. Cubs weren't attacking. The behavioral inhibitors stayed dormant. No aggressive posturing appeared. The genetic stabilizers reported all normal readings. The risk protocols turned green across all metrics. The situation was somehow perfectly safe, but nothing about it made sense. She's arriving at the summit venue, Arhill announced. Moving through the diplomatic corridor now, the cubs are with her. Olivia walked into the presentation chamber exactly 43 minutes behind schedule. She carried nothing. No notes, no data drives, no presentation materials. She simply appeared, looked at the Council's expressions of absolute shock, and tilted her head with genuine confusion. "Why are you all looking at me like I just walked in wearing a tutu?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm a little late. The alarm died, but the cubs woke me up. Good morning to you too, by the way." Kaolthas found himself searching for words. "You're unconcerned about time?" Olivia laughed, a genuine, warm sound that seemed to physically pain several council members to hear. "Humans are always late for things. It's kind of our whole thing. Why, do you guys have somewhere else to be?" "The presentation," Vexia started. "Oh, right. Let me grab my data." Olivia turned to the security team, attempting to block her path with their bodies. She simply walked past them like they weren't there. The cubs at her heels, completely indifferent to the authority hierarchy the Council had carefully constructed. She was a zookeeper. She followed animal care protocols, not diplomatic ones. She returned with physical printouts, actual paper, the most ancient, inefficient data storage method known to modern civilization. "Okay, so basically," she began, setting up her materials with the casualness of someone presenting to elementary students rather than the governing body of the known universe. "The resurrection process works because we treat them like they're individuals. Because we notice when something's wrong. Because we care about them as if they matter. And," she gestured to the cubs settling at her feet, "they respond to that because it's the same way their living ancestors would have bonded with their actual families. We're just being those families." The silence was absolute. "She didn't do anything special," Vexia said quietly. And Kaolthas realized the scientist was speaking more to herself than to the Council. This is just how humans treat animals. This is baseline human behavior. They bond with everything. They can't help it. The weight of that realization settled over the chamber like radiation. The Council had spent millennia cataloging human capabilities. They'd assessed human military potential, human technological capacity, human strategic reasoning. They'd concluded humans were dangerous because they were efficient killers, logical tacticians, ruthless survivors. But the truth, Kaolthas understood now, was somehow worse. Humans weren't dangerous because they were strategic. They were dangerous because they were emotionally reckless. They formed attachments instantly and irrationally. They would sabotage their own interests to protect something they'd bonded with. They couldn't distinguish between genetic kin and adopted kin. They treated animals like family and would defend that family with absolute commitment. It wasn't efficiency that made humans terrifying. It was that they cared. Completely. Irrationally. Without reservation or diplomatic calculation. And they'd just proven that this emotional recklessness could resurrect extinct species better than any genetic protocol in the galactic database. Kael'thas watched Olivia scratch behind a cub's ear while explaining resurrection neurochemistry, completely unaware that she'd just rewritten every paradigm the Council used to understand biological civilization. So that's basically it, Olivia finished cheerfully. Love them. Care about them. They come back to life. Is that not how it works for you guys? Several council members made sounds that might have been agreement or existential terror. Possibly both. The question hung in the chamber like a confession waiting to be made. How did you do it? Kyldra asked, her voice carefully neutral, searching for the hidden mechanism, the advanced technique, the secret protocol that explained the impossible. How did you create this level of bonding in such an accelerated time frame? Olivia blinked, genuinely confused by the question. I just talked to them, fed them, showed interest in what they were doing. She tilted her head, trying to understand what about this required explanation. That's what you do with animals. You treat them like they matter and they respond to that. It's not complicated. The silence that followed was the sound of foundational beliefs attempting to reorganize themselves. Ginix made a sound that might have been distress. She's describing basic emotional reciprocity. She's not hiding advanced techniques. There are no advanced techniques, Ginix continued, speaking more to himself than anyone else. This is just human. Rahil's clicks were frantic. So you're telling me that any human could do this? Any member of your species could achieve these results? Olivia shrugged. Do what? Care about animals? Yeah, pretty much. Sure, some humans are jerks about it, but most of us? We just kind of automatically think animals matter. The implications crashed through the chamber like a physical force. Olivia moved forward with her presentation, but the council found themselves watching her instead of her data. They watched how she gestured toward Nova with genuine affection. How she noticed when Ash shifted position and immediately adjusted her stance to accommodate his comfort. How she spoke about them like colleagues rather than specimens. This one, her name's Nova. She's terrified of loud sounds, but loves being brushed, Olivia explained, running her hand across the cub's shoulder with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. This one's Ash. He eats too fast and throws up if you don't make him slow down. They're individuals. Once you realize they're thinking, feeling things, the bond is kind of inevitable. The vegan representative leaned forward. You're describing them like they're people, aren't they? Olivia responded without hesitation. Maybe not our kind of people, but conscious, aware. Yeah, so I treat them that way. Kael'thas found himself whispering to Vexia. She doesn't understand, she just proved humans are categorically different from every other species we know. She thinks she's normal. And that was the terrifying truth of it. This was normal for humans. They couldn't help but assign consciousness to things they interacted with. They couldn't help but care. They formed attachments the way other species formed strategic alliances, reflexively, automatically, as a default state. Every system the galaxy used to manage animal populations assumed emotional distance. Standard protocols required clinical detachment. Resurrected species were assets to be managed, not family members to be protected. Humans made that impossible. They emotionally bonded with everything, and they refused. absolutely refused to harm things they'd bonded with. The implications cascaded outward. Conservation work with humans would be infinitely more committed than any other species could manage. Humans would sacrifice their own advancement to protect something they decided to care about. Military applications became terrifying and unpredictable. Humans bonded with combat creatures turned those creatures into extensions of their own survival instinct, making them simultaneously more vulnerable and more ferociously protective. Diplomatic negotiations with humans became a liability. They would sabotage their own interests, abandon strategic advantage, commit resources that defied logical analysis, all because they decided something mattered. And most fundamentally, humans were the only species in known space that treated lower animals as having inherent value, independent of utility. The Council voted unanimously for humanity's continued membership. Not because humans were efficient or strategic or logically superior. They voted yes because humans were fundamentally, irrationally, dangerously emotional, and that apparently made them exceptional caretakers, conservationists, and protectors of life. Olivia noticed the expressions of dawning horror as the Council processed their decision. "Wait," she said, her brow furrowing. "You guys were worried I wasn't going to show up? That's why everyone looked so panicked?" "We were afraid," Kael'thas admitted carefully, "that you wouldn't arrive in time to prove your species' worth." Olivia laughed, a sound of genuine disbelief. "Oh my God, I had to get the cubs fed. There's literally nothing more important than that. Did you think I was going to abandon them for a meeting? What kind of person does that make me?" The Council exchanged glances. The kind of person, they realized, who made humans absolutely irreplaceable. The kind of person who would always choose the living thing in front of her over abstract achievement. The kind of person who proved that humanity's greatest strength was their refusal to treat anything as disposable. The summit dissolved into something between panic and revelation. Species representatives crowded around Olivia with questions that had never been asked in diplomatic history. Can humans transfer this bonding capability to other animals? Can they teach this connection to other species? How much would humanity charge for human care specialists across the sector? Olivia answered while absently scratching Nova behind the ears, completely unaware that she was negotiating the terms of humanity's future role in galactic civilization. "I mean, I don't know if we can teach it," she said thoughtfully, "but I could probably show you what we do. It's mostly just noticing when something's wrong and caring about fixing it, talking to them, treating them like individuals instead of inventory. That's pretty much it." The Vegan Empire representative made notes frantically. "We want humans managing our botanical restoration project. Apparently they talk to plants too. We assumed that was useless. We were wrong." Meanwhile, Olivia returned to her quarters completely unaware of the cosmic implications crystallizing around her. She brushed the cub's teeth with the casual expertise of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. She checked their paw pads for injuries, noticed a slight tenderness in Nova's left hind leg, and made a mental note to have it evaluated. She talked about their personalities like she was discussing roommates. Ash's obsession with rolling in dust, Nova's preference for sleeping against the window. She was just being Olivia. In the council chamber, Kaeldra was rewriting protocols. "We're implementing human care standards across all genetic resurrection projects," she announced to her team. "Effective immediately." Ginix looked up from his data. "What are those?" "We're hiring humans," Kaeldra said simply. "Just having them around the animals, their emotionals, Attachment apparently accelerates healing and growth metrics by an average of 40%. Not 47%. Not 38%. 40%. Consistent. Reproducible. Inexplicable. Rahil was reviewing assignment reports. The human asked if the cubs would be okay when she took leave. She was genuinely distressed about it. Does she understand she's been offered a permanent position? The supervisor's message reached Olivia while she was making breakfast the next morning. "You're approved for the position," the voice said through her communication device. "Full salary, benefits, unlimited vacation for animal emergencies." Olivia paused mid-coffee pour. "Wait, unlimited vacation? What's the catch?" "No catch," the supervisor said carefully. "But be aware, you're now the protocol standard for how all species care for resurrected animals. Your methods are being taught to thousands of alien caretakers across the sector." Olivia laughed, the sound slightly bewildered. I just fed them breakfast and scratched behind their ears. That's not a method. That's just being decent." The irony was lost on her completely. In private council session, the numbers were staggering. "We assigned humans to 17 different restoration projects across the sector," Kyle Thas reported. In every case, animal survival rates increased by 40% within 1 month. Every single case. Vexia studied the data with the expression of someone watching the foundations of scientific understanding crumble. How is that possible? "They care," Kael'thas said simply. "Apparently caring actually works. It's not quantifiable in our standard metrics, but it produces measurable results that exceed all our theoretical models." Humanity's new designation was formalized within weeks. Emotional bridge specialists. Not because humans were superhuman or possessed advanced technology, precisely because they were so utterly, fundamentally human. They couldn't help but care, and that involuntary caring somehow unlocked potential in other species that clinical efficiency couldn't touch. The next morning, Olivia woke to gentle paw taps on her shoulder. Nova and Ash greeted her like they did every morning. Tender, trusting, completely certain of her care. She laughed and scratched them both, completely unaware that 17 alien species were studying security footage of this exact moment, trying to decode what made it work. Her supervisor called while she was checking the day's schedule. "Morning, Olivia. Just a heads up. The Andromedan Council wants to implement your care protocols for their genome restoration. They're sending a delegation." Olivia yawned. "Cool. Can they visit on Tuesday? The cubs need their vet checkup Monday, and I promised to take them hiking Wednesday." There was a pause. "You're negotiating with alien representatives about interstellar protocols around your animal care schedule?" "They have a problem," Olivia said simply. "I care about the cubs. Seems pretty simple to me." Later that morning, she stood with Nova and Ash at the restoration site, watching other species workers attempting to implement human care standards. They were trying too hard, overthinking it, treating care like a protocol to be optimized. "Come on, you fuzzy disasters," she called to the cubs. "Let's go show them how this actually works." The cubs followed without hesitation, trusting her completely. Behind the observation windows, alien scientists watched and took notes. They were trying to understand what they were seeing, trying to quantify, measure, and systematize it. The answer, if they could have seen it clearly, was simple. Just a human being human. Just someone who decided that caring about another living thing was non-negotiable. Just someone who treated consciousness, any consciousness, regardless of species or genetic origin, as inherently valuable. Just someone who had, without even trying, proven that humanity's greatest power wasn't strategy or efficiency or technological superiority. It was the absolute refusal to treat anything alive as disposable. And as it turned out, the galaxy had desperately needed someone like that all along.